Welcome to Audit Archive, where we run you through some of the most questionable and rather atrocious police encounters. Today, we're looking at a case where an ignorant police officer pulled an innocent man over for no reason and then arrested him just because he was laughing. On May 13, 2022, Mr. William was driving down the freeway when he flashed his headlights at oncoming traffic in an attempt to warn them about an approaching speed trap. For context, the most common use of the term speed trap refers to a stretch of road where police have an increased presence to enforce speed limits. Essentially, the police do nothing to entrap speeders other than sit where they can measure drivers' speeds. Regardless, soon after Mr. William flashed his lights, Officer J.D. Ellison with the Nicholas County Sheriff's Department pulled him over and immediately made contact with him. This encounter was captured on Officer Ellison's body cam along with his patrol vehicle's dash cam.
That guy flashing these lights, warning everybody you're sitting there. I'm going after him. All right. That was pretty stupid, wasn't it?
What's that?
Flashing your lights at everybody to let them know that law enforcement was sitting there running radar.
Is that what I did? Is that a crime?
Yeah.
It is? I didn't know that.
You got your license, registration, proof?
Yeah, I
Why would you do that? You're flashing your high beams at people to...
In the daytime?
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a crime.
It doesn't say daytime or nighttime. It just says that you can't do it, and you did it. What's that?
The insurance, I didn't look it up on my phone. I don't think I got the actual card yet, but let me see if I can. The insurance, because I got insurance. I switched from Allstate to State Farm.
Right off the bat, it's easy to tell that Officer Ellison was definitely unhappy that Mr. William was warning people of the speed trap. In fact, he heard Officer Ellison speak to a fellow officer who was apparently camping out at the speed trap, stating that he was chasing Mr. William down just because he was warning others about it. This, in and of itself, could allow us to argue that Officer Ellison didn't have a lawful reason to pull Mr. William over. Regardless, Mr. William appeared to be confused as to whether his actions were actually illegal, and we will soon look into this once Officer Ellison cites Mr. William with the frivolous violations coming up. This is also a good time to discuss whether speed traps are illegal or if there's something officers do in order to maliciously cite drivers. It's generally understood that speed traps are an inconvenience for drivers and sometimes appear to be intentionally designed for local municipalities to raise revenue through ticketing. But still, there's usually nothing illegal about the use of speed traps. Regardless of drivers' suspicions, local governments justify these reduced speed zones as necessary to ensure public safety. Now, the issue we have in Mr. Williams' case is Officer Ellison's claim of flashing lights at oncoming traffic being illegal. Let's continue with the body cam footage to see what unfolded next.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know that was a crime. I didn't know that was.
Yeah, you can't high beam people at any time in the daytime or nighttime.
I didn't know that. I didn't know. I mean, nighttime I understand, but daytime I don't know.
I'm sure I could articulate some other kind of driving charge in there for doing that too.
Well,
That's pretty crappy.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I'm just going to call them and see if they can tell me, because I got
it. Just, you can hang tight, listen to what he says.
Once again, Officer Ellison's disdain towards Mr. William became apparent when he called Mr. William's actions crappy, which was another way for Officer Ellison to say that he was extremely dissatisfied with Mr. William making other drivers aware of the speed trap down the road. However, it's worth noting that numerous courts have already ruled that flashing headlights is a form of protected speech under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. To be specific, a federal court in St. Louis ruled that drivers are allowed to flash their lights to warn other motorists of nearby police and speed traps. The court also ruled that it's a First Amendment right. Also, the American Civil Liberties Union also stepped in numerous times across the country, representing individuals concerning this subject. What's interesting is that this particular ruling stemmed from a very similar situation back in 2013, when a driver received a citation for flashing his headlights to notify motorists of radar set up ahead. In light of this case, Jeffrey Mittman, the executive director of the ACLU of Missouri, stated that the police cannot retaliate against drivers who have done nothing wrong and are simply exercising their right to communicate with other drivers. Despite all this, Officer Ellison remained adamant about retaliating against Mr. William, as you will now see.
Alright, sir, there's your stuff back there. And I wrote you 2 citations today. First one being special restrictions on lamps, which you can read that code, and it says no flashing lights shall be on a vehicle. And at that point in time, you had flashing lights on your vehicle. It's unauthorized.
Well, under the Constitution, it's protected in the First Amendment. But I'm going to look into it.
That's in Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm going to look into it. I'm going to see about West Virginia.
Yeah.
Free speech, you know.
Yeah, it's not illegal to do that, to flash and warn, but it's illegal to high beam, and it is legal to have flashing lights on your vehicle, not being an emergency vehicle.
This is where things were getting out of hand, and Officer Ellison was maliciously citing Mr. William with violations that didn't make sense whatsoever. Note that Officer Ellison claimed that flashing headlights is illegal, but then charged Mr. William with a rather inaccurate violation. As seen in the ticket issued by Officer Ellison, Mr. William was charged with violating West Virginia State Code, Section 17C-15-26C, and Section 17A-3-13. Let's begin by taking a look at Section 17C-15-26C, which states that flashing lights are prohibited on motor vehicles. Now, even though this may sound like it's related to the flashing of headlights, it must be understood that this statute essentially bans the installation of lights that automatically flash, similar to that of emergency vehicles. So this statute does not prohibit a driver from manually flashing lights that are normally static, such as headlights in this case. In addition to this, the statute specifically states that blue flashing warning lights are restricted to police vehicles and that red flashing warning lights are restricted to ambulances, firefighting vehicles, school buses, and so on. Judging by this entire situation, we can conclude that this was a false charge against Mr. William, and he was in fact legally allowed to flash his headlights with the intention of communicating with traffic, as we discussed earlier. Moving on, the second charge was for an unsigned registration card, which was more of a frivolous charge out of pure disdain. Mr. William was charged with violating Section 17A-3-13, which states that every registration card shall at all times be carried in the vehicle to which it refers, or shall be carried by the person driving or in control of such vehicle, who shall display the same upon demand of a police officer or any officer or employee of the division. Anyway, as if these acts of retaliation were not enough for Officer Ellison, watch what he did when Mr. William laughed at the ridiculous situation, which was unnecessarily created.
Huh?
I said, I'll see.
Okay. And I could take you to jail today for your unsigned registration card, but I just wrote you a citation for that. That's actually up to 6 months in jail. You think it's funny, sir?
I'll take the ticket, sir.
I know, but do you think this is funny?
I'm allowed to laugh. I can laugh all I want.
Okay. Go ahead and step back here for me.
I didn't do anything.
Sir, I'm asking you to step out of the...
Am I being detained?
Yes, sir, you are. Step out of the vehicle.
Are you serious?
Place your hands behind your back for
Are
me.
you serious?
Yes, sir. Place your hands behind your back for
Oh
me.
man, you're serious, brother.
I'm not your brother.
Believe me, you're not.
Yeah, I'll never be your brother. I'll never be your brother.
Exactly. You'll never be my brother. Just be careful.
I
with
don't
me,
want to
sir.
be your brother.
No, just be careful with me, sir.
Don't jerk away from me.
Just be careful.
Don't jerk away from me, sir.
Just be careful.
Don't jerk away from me.
My wallet is in the car.
Okay, I don't want you to jerk away from me
I was
right
going
there.
away from the traffic.
No, I was putting you in front of my car,
Okay.
which is away from traffic.
You're arresting me for laughing.
No,
I didn't do anything.
I'm arresting you for unsigned registration.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Okay, so stand right there. Do you have any weapons in the
I ain't
vehicle?
got no weapons. I'm working now.
Okay. Hang tight in front of my vehicle for me. Hang tight right here in front of my vehicle for me.
At this point, it's no doubt that Officer Ellison had placed Mr. William under arrest, not for the unsigned registration card, but for simply laughing. As ridiculous as it sounds, Officer Ellison was basically unhappy with Mr. Williams' expression toward the incident, so he deemed it justified to escalate the situation based merely on that. Though quite obvious, Mr. William had every right to laugh or express himself under the First Amendment, which states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech. In fact, in the 2019 case of Neves v. Bartlett, the Supreme Court held that the First Amendment prohibits government officials from subjecting an individual to retaliatory actions for engaging in protected speech. If an official takes adverse action against someone based on that forbidden motive, and non-retaliatory grounds are in fact insufficient to provoke the adverse consequences, the injured person may generally seek relief by bringing a First Amendment claim. These elements of the law further illustrate how unlawfully Officer Ellison dealt with Mr. William throughout the encounter. Regardless, while Mr. William waited in front of the patrol vehicle, Officer Ellison sat inside and spoke to a prosecutor for advice on this ordeal. A few minutes later, Officer Ellison stepped back outside and approached Mr. William.
I guess I'll see you in court. Alright, ticket still stands there. Special restrictions on lamps, unsigned registration card. I gave you till the 23rd of this month to contact the magistrate. Phone number's on your copy there. Once you contact them, they can tell you how to take care of it.
Okay.
Alrighty, sir. Be safe.
Officer Ellison released Mr. William and allowed him to leave with a citation. Following this encounter, Mr. William rightfully chose to fight the charges in court instead of paying the fines under the citation. But things didn't seem to get any better for Mr. William just yet. When Mr. William went to the Magistrate Court of Nicholas County on October 4, 2022, while legally representing himself, Magistrate Michael Hanks convicted him of the alleged crime of special restrictions on lamps while dropping the bogus charge of having an unsigned registration card. Then on November 18, 2022, Mr. William appealed against his conviction and another trial was held at the local circuit court. And there, the same assistant prosecutor who aided Mr. Williams' conviction a month back was still neglecting to back down or change his mind. As of the date of this recording, the judge has acquitted Mr. William of the charge because the flashing light statute that he was charged with violating pertains to equipment, not Mr. William flashing his headlights. Mr. William now plans to file a civil lawsuit against Officer Ellison. Be sure to check out our previous video where we cover another outrageous police encounter.